So it's the comfort that he's constantly trying to give and constantly trying to offer us that we know in the end is a lie, but it is a comfort for us. And he's constantly giving us that comfort. So I think that's when I was asked, what does it mean for me? I mean, what has Chekhov meant for me? Is this tremendous effort to give us comfort. And I'm moved by that. And it's funny, it's very, very funny, the machinations we go through. So I know this isn't supposed to be a Q&A, but but I think that if you have any comments you want to make that affect you, that you feel personally, I think it's not inappropriate. We don't have a lot of time, but in the time that we have, is there anyone who wants to?
What was your first experience reading Chekhov life or being in a Chekhov?
Well, that was it. I couldn't. Was the seagull? I couldn't get past that scene, and finally, it was like we were going to open, and I raised my hand and I said, "What are we going to do about that scene?" And the director, I was of course at school. I had a wonderful teacher. His name was Peter Kess. He said to me, he said that all that was necessary was courage. That I did not. It's not that I didn't understand. I understood only too well, but that I needed the courage, and that was the problem. And interestingly enough, opening night, excuse me, I got through the scene, and he had wanted me to. When she, tears streaming down, throws herself on the floor and starts begging. He wanted me to pull out a handkerchief and put it on the floor so that my clothes would be okay. And then I'm crying. So that was my experience, that comedy was sitting right up against all of this pain and yearning and yeah.
I know that a lot of aspects of Chekhov hold up very well over time in the values and things that are discussed, but are there any things that you particularly find challenging in presenting Chekhov for a contemporary audience, or concerns about how things that may need to be considered that wouldn't have had to be considered, at the time of Chekhov?
Well, I think there's something that's interesting about Vanya. Is that in the 19th century, there was a nationalism that came up. You know, the Peace Corps that we had in the 60s, that thing came up. It was after the serfs were freed. And of course, I mean, the serfs were freed because he wanted a standing army and because he wanted the Industrial Revolution, and the Tsar wanted the Industrial Revolution, and he needed people to get into, which is where all these accidents are happening that Astrov is constantly dealing with, because the peasants don't know how to function in these factories, and so they're always injuring themselves. And so this idealism came, and that's the idealism that is in Vanya and in Astrov. But it's in everybody. Everybody has some dream, some vision. And then as time goes on, I don't know if you think of it as yourself, I think of it myself as an actress, what I visioned for myself and what things didn't happen and what things happened that I didn't think about that, and I didn't necessarily want that, and I wanted this, and my effort to get that as opposed to this. And so that, I think, is for us to understand how important these the moral issue of having a vision and participating in society and making a difference, how important that was to the characters in, you know, at the end of the play you hear what Vanya has like really, you know, done and why he's done it. But it's our understanding of that and our recognition of that in ourselves, what we have valued so highly and what we struggle for, and how we lose that, and that I think is if you listen carefully you can hear it. It doesn't fill out. I mean, the play doesn't give you all of that texture, you know. It's like we have a play, You Can't Take It With You, which is about, it takes place in the Depression. It's never mentioned that that's the Depression. The play never says the Depression. And these people are behaving this way. If you don't know the context, you think they're just a bunch of kooks. But they're not. They're people trying to survive, selling cookies on the street, giving ballet dances, you know. So that's that context that helps us identify with our own, how important visions were. You look at the Russians today with those protesters, how many thousands of people are out in the streets? Tens of thousands of people having some kind of vision. And well, let's not get into politics. Oh, why don't you say what for you means?
What?
For you, what Chekhov has meant doing?
Well, as Olympia was saying, we sort of learned, if I may use the expression, at Williamstown, because Nico Sakharopoulos, who was the artistic director, he did a Chekhov play every goddamn year. And this is how Olympia and I more or less learned Chekhov, because one year he would do the Cherry Orchard, next year he'd do the Seagull, and then he would do Uncle Vanya, and you got to know how to do it. And the wonderful thing was that the town itself and the people who came to Williamstown loved it, because I don't think there was another theater in America that did as many Chekhov plays as Nico Sakharopoulos.
But for you personally, he can't talk, he'll start crying.
Every Chekhov play grabs you. I don't care which one it is. My favorite is Vanya and the Cherry Orchard. But I don't know how anybody can go through any of those plays without being moved, because I think underneath all of Chekhov is this longing. It's like they want, and everything gets in their way, gets cut off, and they kind of sit there and they eat it, they stuff it, like at the very end, we'll work through it, we'll suffer and all that. But if you don't have that initial feeling of longing, every character has it. Yeah. If you can't find that, well, I don't think you can find Chekhov. I mean, maybe a generalization, but that's what I feel. If you're not moved by any one of those plays, it's just too much. It's even like in the last act of The Seagull. My God, when he comes back, or she comes back, and I never could understand her character. I'm a seagull. No, I'm an actress. I'm a seagull. I'm an actress. And that kind of thing, oh, it's very moving. All of Chekhov is moving.
Anyone else? Great.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.